were quoted not long ago as saying, "I regard China as the single most attractive place in the world for us to invest at the moment." How come?
Well, China, for 15 of the last 18 centuries, China was the biggest economy in the world. It went down in the 1700s as Europe came up, and the United States has been the biggest economy in the world since 1870 on. Probably in the year 2035, we will pass that mantle on to China. China will be the biggest economy in the world, and it will really go way past us and really past India. And so given the growth, given the size, given the opportunities there, I don't think there's any other place in the world that can match it. For example, the economy now is about 30% in China focused on consumer spending. Our economy is about 70% focused on consumer spending in terms of GDP. China will build up its domestic consumer spending, and that will produce a lot of opportunities to produce products for those kind of consumers there. In addition, you have to consider the growth rates. We're going to grow at 2 to 3% a year. China is going to grow at 8 to 10% a year. And given the size of China, growing in that rate gives enormous opportunities to invest and find companies to invest in.
And you've been doing that in a big way already, right?
Yes, we have invested more in China than any other private equity firm, and we have invested today about $2.5 billion of equity in about 40-some transactions in terms of real estate, venture, and buyout-related types of investments. We have about 45 full-time professionals investing in China. All of them are Chinese natives who either went to the United States for education or other places, or in some cases educated in China, but they wanted to work in private equity. And now we think this is a terrific place to invest, in part because of the size and the growth opportunities. And we cannot put enough money in China. If we can find enough good deals, we'll do every good deal we can find.
Where else? You recently bought a company in Brazil, I saw. The old joke is Brazil is the country of the future and always will be. Has the future finally come?
You know, eventually something like that probably will happen. Think about this. Brazil is the 5th largest population in the world, but historically it's had problems with its currency, inflation rate, and so forth. But now the currency is under control. It's very stable. Actually, it's appreciating against the dollar. Inflation has been very, very modest over the last couple of years. The enormous natural resources that have been discovered there are really unbelievable. And Brazil will probably be, in a not too distant future, the 5th biggest GDP in the world. So when you consider they have about 200 million people, they've got large natural resources, and most importantly, private equity penetration is very, very small there compared to the United States. And so there's very little competition compared to what we see in the United States or Europe.
Right. Around the rest of the world, what do you especially like?
Well, we do like India. We think India will be the 2nd largest economy in the world in our lifetimes. And India, while it's more complicated as a place to do business than China, ironically, even though English is spoken there, we do find it easier to do business in China. India is still a large economy and will be the 2nd largest, I say. I think the Middle East also offers enormous opportunities because we're going to be dependent on carbon energy related facilities for some time. And as a result, I think the Middle East will do quite well, and more money is going to be invested in the Middle East as people there want to build up their own infrastructure and their own economies. So I think that's also a very attractive place. But I don't want to get away from the United States. The United States is still the place where you have the most advantageous opportunities for investing because of the rule of law, as I mentioned, the transparency, the governance, and also you have a wealth of opportunities here, probably more than any other country.
What's your outlook on Japan? At the moment, it's still the 2nd largest economy on the planet, but there are a lot of people who have not the most sanguine view of its future.
I think it's in a difficult situation. Its population's not reproducing itself, more or less. It's a small population relative to the GDP. The currency is misaligned. It's very expensive, so it's difficult for them to export at the levels they would like to. So I think Japan has some real problems. I think their growth rate is likely to be relatively modest for the next couple of years. And they also have a new government, and that government has never been in power before, so they don't have a lot of experienced people compared to what the LDP had.